Reasonable set of OTA changes and a massive ban list shakeup for Grand Arena. Today, we're going to cover the best decks for finishing out your ladder climb, as well as rounding out the last few bits of glory you need in Grand Arena. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? We kick off my Jeff's picks this week with a Kitty Pride stats deck that I've been playing to success for last month that still feels good after the latest OTA changes. You've got a bunch of different ways to put numbers on the board, from the typical Kitty, Angela, Elsa, Galacta package to Mysterio being powered up by Gwenpool, filling in your final location on the last turn for Elsa Bloodstone bonuses, as well as making Sasquatch cheaper. And you have Mr. Fantastic First Steps, as well as Surge and Zabu, tying the cost reduction room together, allowing you to play out everything more efficiently. Enchantress is the lone tech card slot in this deck. You could play Shang-Chi or even something like Red Guardian or Juggernaut in this slot as well, depending on how you want to customize. But I've found the ongoing decks are one of the few things that can really go over the top of this shell, meaning Enchantress is one of the best slots here, in my opinion. My second Jeff pick is a little bit of a blast from the past, featuring Werewolf by Night alongside the Darkhawk package as your primary ways to put stats on the board. We back this up with an array of Disruption, Korg, and Rockslide. Not only dance the dog around and power up Darkhawk, but they brick some of your opponent's draws. And then Shadow King and Red Guardian can disrupt a little bit of what your opponent has going on as well. We're also leveraging Misery as well as Hood as additional ways to put numbers into play. And then Merlin kind of ties the room together, providing us location variance mitigation, as well as a really efficient way to jump Werewolf by Night into locations that might otherwise be full. Invisible Woman First Steps is looking to be one of the more playable and powerful cards to release this month, and naturally that means there is a lot of hyperbole clickbait surrounding her on the YouTube platform. While she's definitely powerful, I don't know that I would say she's overbearing, and by the numbers that looks to be playing out to be the case so far. One of the big interactions to be aware of with Invisible Woman is that when you Prodigy to get her effect a second time, or you duplicate her in some other way, you actually get 4 of your end of turn triggers when you activate both of them. This means if you play Havoc and Thena on the last turn of the game, for example, you get 16 stats with Havoc and 12 with Thena in a way that's kind of difficult for your opponent to interact with. That being said, all of that coming together is relatively magical Christmas land, so while it looks really impressive and it's tough to interface with when it all lines up correctly, you're not doing that remotely every game. This decklist has a few other ways to get stats on the board, whether it's Marvel Boy powering up a bunch of 1-drops or giving yourself a bunch of die rolls to maybe have Bruce Banner finally turn into the Hulk. It's also leveraging Fantasticar, our super premium pass card that'll be demoting to Series 4 packs once the season rolls over here soon. Another place folks are finding success with Invisible Woman First Steps is the Bast Spice Rack Core. I actually have a highlight with this one up on the Daily Snap Deck Highlights channel, linked in the video description down below later this weekend. This core makes this deck list even more difficult to interact with. Generally speaking, you have scaling threats that are good at dodging effects like Shang-Chi and even Shadow King, since they trigger at the end of the game, and Invisible Woman lets them scale it up a little bit more. I will say, in my experience playing this deck, you do have an added vulnerability to Killmonger since you're leaning on Marvel Boy, but not everything can come for free. Clea's a pretty sweet inclusion here. She synergizes with Marvel Boy and can allow you to get extra stats on a card that otherwise has a deceptively low power to begin with. This Doom 2099 War Machine Legion Lockout amalgamation is benefiting from a couple of our recent over-the-air updates, with Doom getting extra point as well as Mobius, and Mobius being a pretty premium interactive card into a lot of the Mr. Fantastics and Surges that are running amok, in addition to things like Mr. Negative that remain eternally popular. One of the big upsides to this build is the fact that you have 2 different bombs to play out in the last turn of the game. Your opponent needs to simultaneously play around you, spreading out stats pretty evenly with a Doctor Doom, or slamming an absolutely massive stat stick in the Infinite, thanks to War Machine getting rid of its typical downside. This Agatha Harkness Stature Black Bolt deck has been seeing play around the fringes of the format for the last couple of months now, and it's been interesting to see it optimize into this core we have this week in our high potential category. In particular, we have additional 5 energy utility cards that this hadn't been playing previously, and Iron Man as a way to get additional big numbers into location, as well as Lady Deathstrike to give you a dash of interaction. One of the key things you want to be thinking about when building this particular deck is that you need to be all odd costed cards. That way your Moon Knight is guaranteed to discard Agatha, allowing you to retain control of your game on turns 4 and 6 when Agatha would typically be playing them out for you. Buckle up, guys, gals, and non binary pals, as we headed into our top performers on the ladder after this OTA. We have a new form of tech slop here in the form of Victoria Hand Frigga being paired up with Misery and Hood. This is a newfangled way to break your opponent's cards 6 ways from Sunday with Killmonger, Teenage Warhead, Shang-Chi, and Gladiator in tandem with Fenris Wolf, allowing you to take their power and make it your own. It's simply leveraging the package of Iron Patriot, Mirage, and Hood's Demon alongside Victoria and Frigga as an efficient way to put stats into play. It's honestly going to be interesting to me to see how long Second Dinner is going to continue playing whack-a-mole with the various numbers people play around these powerful interactive cards. If it's not Thanos, then it's Zabu and Galacta and Gwenpool, and now it's Victoria Hand and Frigga. Will they ever actually make a card like Shang-Chi a bit worse? Honestly, I kind of don't think so at this point. If you're something of a more classical tech slop enjoyer, this Sarah control variation is still putting up solid numbers for basically the last month. It even got a little bit of a buff in our recent over-the-air update with Invisible Woman gaining a 4th point of power. One of the basic ideas you need to understand with this deck is that if you hide Hitmonkey behind Invisible Woman, it will actually count all of the cards you played out on turn 6, meaning you don't have to spend energy on this 3-point stat stick. You can simply play out a bunch of cheaper things to make it absolutely massive in that Invisible Woman lane, allowing you to cleanly win a second path with a tech card like Shang-Chi or Enchantress. Invisible Woman also has utility into all these end of turn decks running around, because if you play Invisible Woman into, say, a Havoc or Athena path, you can tuck Shang-Chi behind her and then chop down their big thing after it's scaled up. Don't you worry though, if you're a little bit of a millennial tech slop enjoyer, the Zabu core is looking to be eschewing Zabu after it lost its recent point of power, but Gwenpool and Galacta alongside the Fenris Wolf, Killmonger, break all your stuff Shang-Chi package, and then turn around and use those points against you, still looks to be performing well inside of this hand buff core. When Fenris Wolf can't provide the stats you need to win the game, Mr. Sinister as well as Brood work very cleanly alongside things like Mr. Fantastic, Phastos, Gwenpool, and Galacta. Our final ladder deck and top performer today that I want to cover is just the classic Dakin discard deck. If you're someone that wants to play good, honest Marvel Snap that's just doing your own thing, this one has consistently been putting up results. It just puts so many stats on the board in so many different ways. It's difficult to pin it down with just a single piece of interaction. And because copying Dakin makes some big numbers, you can often go over the top of other things, even competing with stuff like Mr. Negative in raw points on occasion. Moving along to our top performing Grand Arena deck list after the ban list and OTA update, it looks like Second Dinner might have really nailed a semblance of fair things in this game mode this time around. Our top 5 highest win rate decks in the Untapped Tracker are using 5 different champions, and only one of them is Tech Card Slop. The highest win rate right now, as of my recording of this, is this Thing First Steps End of Turn deck variation, where you have Invisible Woman as well as Fantasticar as a way to power up your Thing extra alongside a bunch of other cards that benefit from their effect. Similar to my call out earlier, I just want to remind people that if you Prodigy Invisible Woman and activate both of them on the same turn, you get 4 end of turn steps that turn as opposed to just 3. Our second highest win rate Grand Arena deck, clocking at 61%, is the Human Torch Silver Surfer Tech Slop variation. You've got pretty efficient ways to put numbers into play, and then the 4 energy interactive cards like Shang-Chi and Enchantress work really well in a Surfer deck in the Grand Arena mode, since you conveniently have 7 energy to play out a 3 and a 4 on the very last turn of the game. Grand Arena deck number 3 on the Untapped tracker is this Herbie variation that is a sweet combo deck in a few different ways. You can Kid Omega your Black Panther on the Wong path and then elixir it back, making it even larger the following turn. You could be doubling up your Fire Hair a whole heck of a lot. You can be Venoming something massive to Phoenix Force or elixir it back, and you can be Arnim Zolaing all of the above all around the board. I think a deck like this, putting up solid numbers in a reasonable sample size on the tracker, means that hopefully there's breathing room to be doing a sweet thing instead of just breaking stuff in Grand Arena right now. Speaking of breaking stuff, a classical destroy variation with Carnage as the champion is our 4th highest performer, also with an about 60% win rate on the Untapped tracker so far. It is worth noting that while I wouldn't classify this deck as tech slop necessarily, you have Killmonger as both an enabler and an interactive card, and Shang-Chi still hanging out here to cut down whatever might be bigger that your opponent has going on. Finally, clocking in at a 59% win rate on the Untapped tracker in a couple thousand game sample size, we have this Mr. Fantastic variation. This deck list is good at putting big numbers of its own into play, with Spectrum and Onslaught being powered up by Captain Carter and Iron Man, as well as Mystique to copy them, and Moonstone to double that up even further. It's also got Cosmo to protect itself from opposing copies of Enchantress and Rogue, and then Super Skrull could still do a lot of work in this game mode with things like Gore and Null and even opposing Mr. Fantastic decks floating around ready for you to take advantage of. All in all, I gotta say, it seems like we're having a pretty solid end to the season. The recent over-the-air update did a good little pushing around the edges, and the refresher in the Grand Arena game mode halfway through was definitely much needed, with it looking a lot more diverse, as well as there being buffs to the weaker champions like Mole Man, who are performing a little bit better now, even if they're not necessarily top tier. As always, I would love to hear in the comments down below what deck lists you've been finding success with. If you enjoyed my roundup today, make sure to smash that like button. If you happen to be new here, consider subscribing to the channel as well so you don't miss future deck list roundups like this and other Marvel Snap game news in the future. I'm looking forward to our new season that's right around the corner. We'll have a whopping 5 cards releasing this upcoming Tuesday. If you want to see my thoughts on the July season cards on the way out the door, be sure to check out yesterday's video on the channel as well. As always, I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of the video, and I hope your next snap pack is an excellent one.